And welcome to our webcast for October 7, 2016. My name is Christian Debré and this is Amy Asbrook, the director of Toujours Vivant Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
Toujours Vivant Not Dead Yet is an organization by and for people with disabilities and our allies. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practices that discriminates against people with disabilities. Today's topics, we have two subjects. Unintended victim of euthanasia and assisted suicide, and the second one is conscience rights and palliative care. For talking about it, this is Amy Asbrook.
Thanks. Okay, our first topic is unintended victims of euthanasia and assisted suicide. A recent article in the Huffington Post by Dr. Will Johnston describes two of the unintended and probably ineligible victims of the new euthanasia law in Canada. The article can be found, and I give a link, and you can get that link if you subscribe to our weekly mailing list, and you'll get that in the text of the webcast. Dr. Johnston tells the story of a friend whose neighbor told her his wife was going to get an assisted suicide. Quote, the neighbor said they would be going to a doctor in Vancouver to get this done. This baffled the friend, who had seen the woman outside her home gardening. The neighbor made other comments suggesting that his wife would be dead soon and that she had heart trouble. The friend tipped off her own nurse and got community services involved, and the suicidal woman's depression began to be addressed by a nurse and social worker. This apparently able-bodied woman did not go to Vancouver right away.
So we have a woman who are gardening, who have a partially at least able body,
Right.
Seems to enjoy a part of the life because she's gardening.
Right.
And this for assisted suicide.
Right.
Something goes wrong.
Right. Exactly.
It smells fishy.
Right. We'll probably figure out why that's fishy, but it definitely seems a little odd that she's gardening. She is supposed to be, her death is supposed to be reasonably foreseeable.
Which doesn't seem to.
It doesn't seem to, and we can't know all the facts here,
No.
but this is what we're hearing. Dr. Johnston's friend continues the story. A few days later, in early June, the husband came over with a clipboard and a pen. He started by saying, "Damn government did not pass the euthanasia bill." He asked me to sign a form that he needed 2 signatures for the doctor in Vancouver to do the euthanasia. He stated that none of their family or friends would sign.
Another fishy declaration.
Right.
If nobody in the people who really knows that woman doesn't want to say fine, it's because it is not the way to do.
Right, it's because she's probably not eligible for assisted suicide, or they don't believe that she really wants assisted suicide.
Yeah, one or the other, and both are quite not good.
Right, and it's supposed to be the woman who's pushing for her own assisted suicide, but it's the husband who's carrying around the clipboard with the forms on it.
That's normally not the way that the law is built.
Right, exactly.
It's not the text and it's not the intention.
The person who asks for assisted suicide and who gets the form signed themselves.
Maybe it is, and she asked her husband to do, but it's not the way that the law is built.
Right. The quote continues, "Would not sign. He assumed that it was for religious grounds, and I said, no, it was experiential. He said, okay, then I will ask your husband. I told him he had better not even bring it up because her husband wouldn't sign."
Yeah, both of the people are against. Okay.
Right, exactly. After the designated day for the euthanasia, the friend noted that the neighbor's balcony was draped in black crepe.
So the woman is dead.
Right. And he he lets people know by putting decorations on the house, the black crepe. When she bumped into him at the mailbox, the neighbor complained that none of the neighbors had given him condolences, even though he made it obvious that his wife had passed.
You never did do those kind of things to a murder. Never, ever. So don't ask why he doesn't receive those condolences.
Right. Right. Well, it seems a little odd that he's complaining about not getting condolences. He should be more thinking about having lost his wife, but
yeah,
whatever. He said that his wife had a nice last day and that she liked the walk around the seawall.
She was walking around the seawall. So she's not
terribly disabled anyway.
Not at all. So
well,
why?
I mean, you can walk a little bit.
Yes.
And you're disabled.
Yes.
But you're not. Your death isn't reasonably foreseeable, which is the point.
No. I wish it will be very far away, but I know that my life expectancy is shorter. I'm heavily damaged by osteoarthritis. Okay, sorry, my English is not very good. But my life expectancy is short, but I'm not dying right now.
Right, your death is not reasonably foreseeable.
No.
Right. According to Dr. Johnston, this appears to be medical homicide as a solution to depression, apparently facilitated by a husband who had other interests. And there's actually more detail in the original article, but space to fit it all in there. So
you have to read it.
You have to read the original article that is linked from our text that we'll send out. Dr. Johnston tells of a second case. Several weeks ago, I was contacted by the wife of a young man with a neurological disease.
So this is the second case.
Right, the second case.
And the law is just beginning to be applied. And it's only one doctor in one part of the Canada.
Right, exactly.
Oops.
Right. The man had been assured by a physician, by a euthanasia performing doctor in Vancouver, that he qualified for an assisted suicide. He was depressed and never ventured outdoors.
He qualified because he's depressed.
Well, not necessarily because he's depressed, but because he's disabled.
Okay.
And, but the problem is he's also depressed and he shouldn't be qualified because he's depressed.
Okay, that's the way the law wants it, that you should not be qualifying if you are just disabled.
Right. Well, the law says that you shouldn't qualify if you are a vulnerable person, if you're vulnerable to being induced to commit suicide. And people who are depressed tend to be vulnerable.
Yeah, very vulnerable.
So that's why there's some doubt as to whether he would be qualified under the law.
But in the law, he's supposed to be one of the first to be protected against.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
At the patient's invitation, I visited him in his shared room in a dingy nursing home, a place once described to me as a prison.
Which happened quite a lot of time.
Right. We've talked before about how nursing homes can be like prisons for people with disabilities because you don't have any control over when you eat, when you get up, and even whether you can leave or not sometimes.
The rules are very close to the rules in prison. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So this person, even though he has a wife, is living in a nursing home because obviously they couldn't get home-based services for him.
So the society missed something around that.
Right, and that's obviously making part of what is making him depressed.
Okay.
He told me about his struggles to find a cure for his disability with massive doses of vitamins. He has he was less disabled than, for instance, Walter Lawrence, who works in Vancouver as a peer counselor to spinal cord injured people and others.
So more disabled people are still working.
Right, exactly. And not only still working, but, you know, have a better outlook on life, probably because they live independently and live on their own and
Okay.
have more control in their lives.
So this is one other point. Great.
Right. But this patient had lost hope for the future and felt his existence was meaningless and that death was the only solution. This death-focused tunnel vision defines a suicidal depression, and any able-bodied person would be given psychological help
Yeah.
to relieve it.
It's obvious.
Any person without a disability, if they talked about feeling like their life was meaningless and the only solution they could see is death, that person would get help for their
Yeah, that's
depression.
the way it's done in the life.
Right. That's what suicide prevention services
Yes.
are all about. This disabled man, who was nowhere near dying, was instead killed by a Vancouver physician. The physician's rationale for circumventing the law,
Circumventing. So
getting around,
getting around. So he's not respecting the law, he's just getting around.
right, for circumventing the law, reportedly given over the phone before she met and examined the patient, was that he could easily get bed sores and then die of infections.
So
that
he
his
doesn't
death,
yet have bed sore.
right, so that his death was reasonably
Okay.
foreseeable.
So you may catch some pneumonia. So you are able to get your assisted suicide.
Right,
Hey, you never have this pneumonia before. So what the heck
right,
they do with this guy?
right, exactly. So he doesn't have bed sores, but
He may have one.
he could get
He
some
could.
someday. He could come down with bed sores someday, and that could cause an infection.
And he may die from
And he
this
might- that-
infectious.
Could potentially die from. Therefore, his death is
Unbelievable.
reasonably foreseeable.
It's absolutely unbelievable.
Right. That's not reasonably foreseeable. In the law, there's a principle that the cause factor has to be close enough to the thing that it causes to be legitimately linked to it, and that's not close enough for the cause and effect.
Correct me or I'm not right, okay? The death must be foreseeable. In the law is meaning that the death must occur in a way that the doctor are sure that the patient will die.
No, it's not
No?
sure. It's that they basically, the way it was expressed to me by Dr. Harvey Chochinov is, would the doctor be surprised if the patient were dead a year from now?
A year from now. So,
it's a pretty loose standard.
but you say that the death should appear within a year if the doctor really knows what he's talking about.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a very loose standard, so
Yeah,
it's
with a
impossible
loose
to
standard.
know. But basically, legally, the link between the cause, i.e. an infection because of a bed sore that the guy doesn't even have, and is pretty distant.
Yeah.
And
It's more than 1 year, and normally the doctor should be surprised that the patient die of bed sore in less than a year.
right,
So that with this loose science standard, it's still not a way to do.
I mean, it's physically possible for somebody to get a bed sore and die within a year, but
Normally not.
it's, if the person's getting proper care, they're not going to get bed sores.
And even if you get bed sore, it could
You're
be
not-
treated and
right.
not dying
They're
from it.
not going to die from it. So,
Yeah.
okay. What surprised the man's wife was how easy it was for her depressed, self-isolated husband to be killed under the new regime.
So even his wife was not aware he will be killed.
Right. She was hoping that he wouldn't be killed,
Oof.
but she was surprised that he could be killed, that he wanted to be killed and that he was killed.
Ow.
What seems obvious is that the whole context of this death is not going to be reported to the Minister of Health or the Minister of Justice. There is no transparency in this system. This is all
How it's happening.
This is all what Dr. Johnston is saying, and I have to agree that, you know, this guy's going to show up as a statistic, as reported by the doctor who made the decision and who administered the euthanasia. That doctor is going to report her, I think it's her decision. And of course, what she's saying is going to justify what she did.
So the murderer is the person who reported the thing.
Right.
So be sure he will not accuse himself
Right.
or herself.
Exactly.
Okay.
Dr. Johnston concludes, 5 years from now, the mandatory report is going to be full of bland and self-justifying statistics presented by the very doctors who have done the killing.
Exactly what I said.
Right. By sanitizing these medicalized suicides and homicides, the now familiar euphemism about medical aid in dying.
We have talked about many times that this is a euphemism because the real term is euthanasia or assisted suicide. You killing yourself or
getting a doctor to do it for you.
Yeah.
Doctors will reassure the uninvolved public that nothing has gone wrong. By using that term, it's medical aid in dying. Basically, they're reassuring the public that everything's okay, everything's fine, nothing's gone wrong.
And after the fact, if sick people, let's call it like that, okay, if a sick people being killed, the family most of the time say, oh, it may be better for him.
Or it's too late now.
Yeah, he's already dead. Don't do anyways. We will accept that. The fact is done, and don't do anything more.
Right. It's too upsetting. We don't want to deal with it. It's all over. We'll just let sleeping dogs lie.
Yeah. But for one, let's say, lousy thing or one opportunity, if you could call it like that, it's not so bad. But if it's 1 every 1,000, it's not acceptable at all. Even 1 every 10,000, it's not acceptable.
Right.
And the law is applied only since few months, and we have already 2 cases happening that we are sure of it.
Right.
Something goes wrong.
Right. That in these 2 cases we've described, it looks like something's gone wrong, and we can't say for sure.
Yeah,
we don't know all the facts.
Yeah, but it doesn't look great.
It doesn't look great. People who support euthanasia often say that opponents' fears about medical aid in dying are exaggerated. These are 2 cases where people who were seemingly ineligible because they were vulnerable persons being induced to commit suicide based on their circumstances and whose death did not appear to be reasonably foreseeable, were nevertheless killed. So both of those people appeared to be vulnerable within the definition of the law, and also their deaths did not appear to be reasonably foreseeable.
So from my point of view, it's an obvious case that it is doctor shopping and people shopping, that you find somebody who will apply and go around the law, not applying the law.
Right. Well, we don't know how many people they had to consult before they found a doctor who was willing to do it. But
yeah. Or at least the doctor have a reputation.
Right.
Already.
Or they found a doctor who was willing to make those decisions. And maybe it's that the doctors don't understand what a vulnerable person means or what reasonably foreseeable means. But it appears that these 2 cases, they were ineligible on 2 grounds, that they were vulnerable persons and that their deaths were not reasonably foreseeable.
Okay.
But without the context of detailed information about the deaths and people who care about the context, these people will disappear into what Dr. Johnston calls the bland statistics.
Yeah.
We need more articles like Dr. Johnston's. So more people who observe what happens and who talk about it.
Any witness.
Hopefully family, friends, neighbors, medical professionals, and others will tell the stories behind the statistics so we can understand the real consequences of euthanasia and assisted suicide. Because obviously some people, they're gonna be completely eligible and it'll be, they really want it and it'll be a good thing for them. But there are some people that it's not gonna be the right thing. They won't be eligible. And we need those people to come forward with those cases. So, all right, our next topic is conscience rights and palliative care. The Ontario College of Physicians and Fraser Health in British Columbia are putting pressure on physicians to administer euthanasia in violation of their conscience rights.
They are not the law alone. The Prime Minister in Quebec tried to do the same.
Right. And so in Bill C-14, the medical aid in dying law, doctors have a right to refuse to provide euthanasia.
And it's a right. It's not just something around. It's a right.
Right. So while this may seem at first glance to be an issue for doctors to deal with, it affects anyone who wants to be secure that their doctor will protect them from subtle pressures to have euthanasia or assisted suicide. So some people might say, oh, well, it's doctors have to take care of it. They're rich. They can take care of it themselves. They're powerful. They can speak up for themselves. But in fact, everybody should be concerned about this. Yes. Because it affects everybody.
Yeah, we're all getting old. And when you're getting old, sometimes you're getting some handicap or one way or the other. It's just a matter of time.
Right, and doctors who are being pressured either to provide euthanasia or to make referrals for euthanasia are not going to be able to assure their patients that they can be protected.
Yeah, I want to be protected. I don't want that my doctor say I practice euthanasia. Right. If it's that way, I will be afraid from my doctor.
Right. In British Columbia, Fraser Health Authority is putting pressure on hospices to perform euthanasia and assisted suicide on their premises. This is a violation of the principles of hospice to neither accelerate nor delay death. So that's a basic World Health Organization definition of palliative care is to neither accelerate nor delay death. But if people have to commit euthanasia, that's accelerating death.
Yeah, so it's against their original mandate.
Right. If hospices are forced to perform euthanasia, they will no longer be places where people can feel secure against hastened death. Now, we gave examples in the French side when we were talking about this. Christian has disabilities, but he really loves his life. But I have disabilities as well. And one of my disabilities is that I have depression, and that makes me feel sometimes like I don't want to live. And because I have these, like being legally blind, I'm afraid that sometime when my depression tells me I don't want to live, that somebody will say, well, you're disabled in other ways, so
it sounds to be a good idea to kill yourself.
Right. So that's why it's very important to me to have a doctor who doesn't believe in euthanasia, so that if I lose my perspective, I can have a doctor who's there to protect me
against yourself,
from myself, who's going to make sure that instead of getting euthanasia, I get suicide prevention services, just like anybody else should get.
Yeah, like anybody else could get.
Right.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Ontario College of Physicians has decided that doctors who refuse to perform euthanasia must refer to their patients to someone who will euthanize them.
So you are not the guy who push the trigger. You say to a hitman to push the trigger for you.
Right. But that doesn't absolve you of guilt.
No, in the law, you're guilty.
Right, exactly. Forcing the doctors to refer their patients for death will negate their conscience rights not to kill their patients. It will also disrupt the trust between doctors and patients, where a patient can't be sure that the doctor will always work to save her life. So, in addition to violating the doctor's conscience rights, it also makes the patient feel vulnerable that the doctor won't always work to save their life. You can help preserve doctors' conscience rights and the safety of palliative care by writing to the College of Physicians in your province.
So there's something that you could do.
Right. We always end up with something that you can do because we're not just saying, oh, this is a terrible situation. We are offering that there's always something you can do to make it better. For more information, email TVNDY at info@tv-ndy.ca. So, if you want more information about the subjects we discuss on our webcast, you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant, not dead yet. I put that article by Dr. Johnston up there earlier this week. You can go to our website at tvndy.ca. You can email us at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow us on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks very much to Christian for helping out.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks to you for being there.
See you
Until
next
next
week.
time, take care. Goodbye.
Take care. Bye.